So, uh, what if I told you that trying to, aggressively relax this weekend is actually the absolute worst thing you can do if you want your weekend to feel long?
Yeah, it sounds completely backwards, doesn't it?
It really does. But you know the exact feeling I'm talking about. You stare at the calendar, maybe you're flipping it from November to December, and your brain just sort of short circuits.
Right, you look at the page and think, wait, how are we already here?
Exactly. Like, what actually happened to the last 11 months?
Yeah.
It genuinely feels like someone hit the fast forward button on your life when you weren't looking.
It is a universally disorienting experience. I mean, we all feel it. And it's the exact phenomenon we are decoding today.
Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. Our mission for this conversation is, it's pretty ambitious, but incredibly practical.
Very practical, yeah. We are looking at some fascinating insights from the Finch Q team.
Right, focusing specifically on their framework for expanding time through contrast and movement. We are going to figure out exactly how you can make a year feel longer, richer, thicker, without actually altering the clock.
Because if you have ever reached the end of a month or a year and felt like it vanished in the blink of an eye, you are not alone. And more importantly, your brain isn't broken.
Thank goodness for that.
It's just, it's operating a little too efficiently, really.
And that efficiency introduces this massive paradox, right? Most of us operate under this deeply ingrained assumption that if time feels like it is moving too fast, the antidote is to pull the emergency brake.
Right. We think, I just need to slow down. I need to rest.
Like, I need a quiet weekend doing absolutely nothing on the couch.
Exactly. But the source text argues something profoundly counterintuitive here. Slowing down alone is not enough.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that runs counter to literally every self-care article on the internet right now.
I know, it really does. But a slow day that looks exactly like the last 10 slow days is still going to completely disappear from your memory.
If pulling the emergency brake doesn't work, what is actually happening in our heads?
Oh.
Are we talking about the brain acting like a hyper-efficient video game engine?
That's a great way to put it, actually.
Like, to save processing power in RAM, the game only renders high-resolution textures when your character enters a brand new room.
Right, yes.
And if you just stay in the exact same room all day, the brain drops down to low-res rendering and just leaves no dense memory files to look back on.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize the underlying mechanism. Neuroscientists call it predictive processing.
Predictive processing, okay.
The brain is fundamentally an energy-saving machine.
Right.
It is constantly predicting the sensory inputs of your environment.
So it's always guessing what's coming next.
Exactly. So when an experience becomes too familiar, the same morning commute, the same breakfast, the same tasks at work, the mind stops actually perceiving it.
It just recognizes the pattern.
Right? It recognizes the pattern, predicts how the rest of the sequence is going to play out, and essentially drops into that low-res mode you mentioned.
Wow.
It moves on. It doesn't need to write a new memory because, well, it already has the file.
So it's not even recording the day. You're effectively unconscious, temporally speaking.
Exactly. That is why entire months can vanish, even in lives that are relatively calm and safe.
The opposite of temporal compression, that terrifying feeling of time speeding up, is not rest.
No, the opposite of compression is distinction.
Distinction, which means we need to force the brain to start rendering in high resolution again. We have to break the automation.
Right, and the material we're looking at explores this through the concept of markers.
But I have to admit, when I hear the word marker or, milestone, my brain immediately jumps to exhausting things.
Oh, totally. Weddings, buying a house, major cross-country moves.
Or sudden tragedies, things that are huge.
And those certainly leave a permanent imprint because they generate massive prediction errors in the brain. But the framework we are looking at points out that most of life isn't made up of those massive cinematic events.
Because if you relied only on those to anchor your time, the years between them would just become a total blur.
Fortunately, your brain does not require a life-altering event to create a marker. Small, intentional interruptions to your daily automation work incredibly well.
Provided they force the brain to start predicting and start perceiving.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the first way we can actually manufacture this distinction, which is cognitive markers.
Yes, this is about learning. The source text describes it beautifully as creating useful friction.
Useful friction, I love that phrase.
It's the key to this whole section. When you learn something completely new, your brain cannot rely on its predictive models.
Because it doesn't have any yet.
Right. It has to actually work to separate one attempt from another. It has to notice errors and novelty and gradual change.
And neurologically, something happens here too, right?
Yeah, when you encounter this kind of friction, your brain releases dopamine. We usually think of dopamine as just the reward chemical,
Feel good stuff, yeah.
but it's actually a chemical fixative. It flags an experience and says, hey, this is new, this is important, save this.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The research emphasizes that mastery is entirely beside the point.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, practicing a new skill badly is actually what creates the mental contours that make life memorable.
Yes.
So, picking up a guitar and sounding terrible, or trying to learn a new language and completely mangling the grammar, that awful, frustrating beginner phase, is practically a superpower for expanding your perception of time.
Precisely. It's the friction that matters, not the result.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
If I spend my Tuesday evening stubbornly struggling to figure out a complex new video editing software, and I'm incredibly frustrated and annoyed for an hour, why on earth would I want to expand my perception of a miserable afternoon? Isn't a frictionless, perfectly curated evening just scrolling on social media just, better?
It's a completely fair question, and it highlights the difference between hedonic pleasure, just feeling comfortable in the moment, and temporal anchoring.
Okay, so feeling good versus remembering you existed.
Basically, yeah. When you're scrolling a frictionless feed, you might feel a mild, numbing comfort, but your brain is predicting every single swipe.
Right.
No prediction error means no chemical fixative is released. The time vanishes.
Wow.
But when you are struggling with that editing software, you are generating massive amounts of cognitive friction. Yes, it's frustrating, but that frustration is the feeling of your brain actually mapping an experience.
You were forcing your brain to wake up and record the day.
Exactly. When you look back on your week, that Tuesday won't be a blur. It will have architectural weight.
So I am essentially trading a fleeting moment of easy comfort for the long-term feeling of having actually lived a robust week.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But cognitive friction is mostly internal. What about external friction? Because, we have dozens of routine exchanges with other human beings every day that just keep the day moving.
Right, the typical script.
Yeah, like, hey, how are you? Fine, you. I assume those don't mark time at all.
They don't. They are completely predicted by the brain. And this is where social markers come in.
So how do we create distinctions socially?
You have to move past those heavily scripted routines to find emotional texture.
Emotional texture, meaning interactions that actually spike your emotional arousal.
Exactly. Memory consolidation is heavily influenced by the amygdala.
Which is the brain's emotional processing center, right?
Yes. So when you meet someone completely outside your usual demographic, or when you hear a story that fundamentally shifts your perspective on a subject you thought you understood,
The brain lights up.
your amygdala signals the hippocampus to encode that memory deeply. You might completely forget 30 days of perfectly pleasant water cooler small talk.
Oh, I definitely do.
But you will vividly remember the one strange, intense conversation with a stranger on a train that made you see the world differently. It creates a temporal tentpole.
And those social interactions are intimately tied to where they happen, which leads us directly into sensory markers, the environment itself.
Right.
Think about how a specific smell can instantly teleport you back to a vacation you took 10 years ago with, like, terrifying clarity.
It is so visceral. The senses act as your brain's primary archivists.
The archivists, I like that.
The rich contrast of sensory inputs, waking up to a sudden change in the weather, seeing a different quality of ambient light in the afternoon, the smell of ozone before a storm.
Or the sheer chaotic sound of a bustling train station.
Exactly. These physical contrasts keep time from flattening into an abstraction. The more sensory contrast you feed the brain, the more distinct data points it has to hold on to when constructing your memory of the past year.
But this brings up a glaring issue with how most of us actually live today.
Oh, a massive issue.
Because if the brain needs sensory contrast to expand time, then our highly digital modern lifestyle is essentially the ultimate sensory deprivation chamber.
It truly is. Highly digital life feels strangely thin when we look back on it.
Right.
Think about the physical reality of a 9-to-5 workday at a computer, followed by 3 hours of streaming television on the couch.
It's just endless screens.
You are forcing your sensory archivists into a state of absolute punishing sameness. You are staring at the same glowing rectangle in the exact same physical posture.
With the exact same visual frame.
Breathing the exact same climate-controlled air, your eyes, your ears, your skin. They are receiving the identical inputs hour after hour, day after day.
The game engine just stops rendering altogether.
Yes.
It's no wonder we look up and realize it's suddenly December. We gave the brain literally 0 distinct sensory inputs to archive.
None at all. And this is why you cannot separate sensory inputs from the physical vessel that experiences them.
Which brings us to perhaps the most profound and overlooked concept in this entire framework. Physical markers.
Right, because your sensory inputs are entirely dictated by where your body is located in space.
But normally, when we talk about movement, we immediately box it into very rigid utilitarian categories.
We do. We think about fitness, burning calories, getting our steps in.
Yeah, aging well. Like, I need to hit 10,000 steps so my doctor doesn't yell at me at my next physical.
Exactly. It becomes a chore. But the Finch Q material reframes movement entirely.
What's fascinating here is the underlying thesis.
Yeah, that the body isn't just a meat vehicle passing through the day. It is actively helping the brain mathematically map the day.
So when our movement shrinks to the same limited patterns, sitting in the exact same ergonomic chair, walking the exact same path from the desk to the kitchen, our lived contrast shrinks right along with it.
And there is a massive neurological component to this, too. The brain literally tracks where we are in space to build memories.
Wait, really? The spatial location is built into the memory?
Yes. The hippocampus, which is the brain structure largely responsible for memory formation, is packed with what neuroscientists call place cells and grid cells.
Okay.
They literally map your physical location in an environment. Memory is intrinsically spatial.
So if you don't move...
When you do not change your spatial orientation, the hippocampus is starved of the geographical data it uses to differentiate one memory from another.
This perfectly explains the travel phenomena. This completely blew my mind when I made the connection.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Think about a time you traveled somewhere completely new.
Yeah.
Why does a 5-day trip to a foreign city feel like you've been gone for a whole month?
Because your body is in a state of constant, unrelenting recalibration.
Yes.
The physical markers are everywhere, firing off those place cells and grid cells continuously.
Yeah.
You are walking on uneven cobblestones instead of flat office carpet.
You are navigating new spatial distances.
You are using entirely different stabilizer muscles to climb unfamiliar transit stairs. You are experiencing new physical fatigue.
So movement in these moments is not just exercise.
No, it is orientation. It helps define where we are in time by forcing us to constantly change how we move through space.
So what does this all mean for us right now on a practical, random Tuesday afternoon? Like when my smartwatch buzzes and irritatingly tells me to stand up, is it basically planting a tiny temporal flag in my day?
In a way, yes.
But more importantly, do I have to live in a state of constant geographic chaos? Because honestly, the idea of having to constantly rearrange my living room furniture or hike a new mountain every single day just to keep my brain from fast-forwarding, it sounds absolutely exhausting.
I would burn out in a week.
Same. So what's the balance?
That is the million-dollar question. Do we need to be digital nomads constantly backpacking through novel terrain to feel like we're living long lives?
Please say no.
The answer is no, thankfully. The research makes a very crucial distinction here. We do not need constant disruption to feel alive. Stability is not the enemy.
Oh, thank goodness.
Healthy stability is actually the prerequisite for variation. You need a baseline.
Right, because if everything is novel all the time,
the brain gets overwhelmed and stress hormones take over, which actually impairs memory. The real enemy of time is not peace. It is over-automation.
Over-automation.
It is living days that are so flawlessly optimized, so deeply routed in frictionless habit, that they become entirely indistinguishable from one another.
Okay, so it's the difference between having a comforting, stable morning routine that anchors you versus operating on literal autopilot.
Exactly.
Like when you arrive at your office and genuinely cannot remember the 20-minute drive there because your brain completely tuned out the entire commute.
Precisely. Over-automation is what shrinks time. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the core philosophy behind the Finch Q mindset we're exploring.
Right.
This isn't about injecting manufactured urgency into your life. It isn't about setting constant alarms or trying to fill every weekend with dramatic, perfectly curated, Instagram-worthy moments.
It is simply about paying attention to patterns over time.
Yes. The body reveals life itself through steadiness, adaptation, and tiny physical shifts. A life with more micro-physical variation provides the brain with more distinction.
That could be incredibly subtle, right?
Very subtle. walking a slightly different, less efficient path through your neighborhood, sitting on the floor to stretch while you read, instead of sinking into the exact same groove on the couch you've sat in for 3 years.
These small things provide the brain with new memory anchors. It fundamentally changes how we evaluate our lives at the end of the year.
It really does.
Usually we sit there on December 31st and ask that panic existential question, where did the year go?
Which is a question rooted entirely in a feeling of passive loss. Like time is just a river that swept you away while you weren't looking.
Right. But the framework we're discussing suggests a gentler and, honestly, much more revealing question.
Instead of asking where it went, we should look back and ask, what in that year stood out enough to hold it open?
To hold it open. It's a magnificent way to visualize it. It totally shifts the focus.
Time stops being something that just happens to us and becomes something we actively help shape through the richness, the friction, and the distinctness of our days.
So, to you listening right now, take a hard look at your own daily routine. Where is the over-automation?
Where has your life become so flawlessly frictionless that your brain's rendering engine is just hitting delete to save power?
What is one small piece of useful friction you can inject into today? Can you embrace the cognitive struggle of being terrible at a new hobby for 20 minutes?
Can you seek out a weird sensory input or take a totally different, inefficient physical route home just to give your hippocampus something to actually map?
It doesn't require overhauling your entire life or booking an international flight. It just requires a marker, a little bit of deliberate contrast.
Let's quickly recap the mechanical journey we've taken in this deep dive.
Yeah, so we started with the realization that you cannot make life feel longer by chasing more time on the clock.
And you can't slow down time just by resting, because a blur of restful days still completely vanishes from your memory due to predictive processing.
Instead, we expand our perception of time by giving it architectural shape. We do that through distinct markers.
The cognitive friction we embrace by stubbornly trying to learn new things.
The social textures we invite by breaking routine scripts.
The sensory contrasts we expose ourselves to, and crucially, how we physically move our bodies through different spatial environments to force our place cells to fire.
The physical body and the brain are working in tandem to map our existence. It's so empowering. The clock is going to keep ticking at the exact same objective speed, but your subjective year can still become infinitely wider.
Before we wrap up, though, there is a fascinating, slightly terrifying implication here that builds perfectly on the source material.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it is incredibly relevant for the immediate future. We just discussed how our current digital life flattens our sensory markers and compresses time because of physical sameness.
We sit in the same chair, staring at the same flat screen.
The low-res rendering trap.
Exactly.
But what happens as we fully cross the threshold into the era of immersive virtual reality and the metaverse?
Oh, wow.
If VR technology advances to the point where it can perfectly simulate novel physical terrains under your feet, provide fully spatial, infinitely varied audio, and generate distinct, breathtaking visual environments.
It could effectively fool your sensory archivists.
Precisely. If navigating that digital space requires entirely new physical movements, ducking, reaching, walking on omnidirectional treadmills, will our brains encode those digital experiences as genuine temporal markers?
I see where you're going with this. That is wild.
Could you one day technically expand your perception of time, generating massive amounts of spatial and cognitive friction, and live a mentally longer, richer year without ever actually leaving your climate-controlled living room?
That is an incredible thought.
Or will the underlying, undeniable biological reality of your actual location, the ambient temperature of the room that never changes, the familiar, unchanging gravitational pull of your house, eventually override the headset?
Does the physical body ultimately demand physical truth? Or can we artificially synthesize the contrast the brain needs to expand time?
It's a huge question. Can we hack the biological span of our memories entirely through digital friction? Or does the physical body always eventually know the difference and trigger a temporal collapse?
We will leave you to ponder that one as you look at your own screens today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Go out, break your automation, and create a new marker today.